Hello and welcome to Arnie's Short Stories. I hope you enjoy this story. I'm going to try and upload a new story each day. The Sinister Clock. Holly Arnold stepped off the ferry, inhaling the brisk, salt-kissed air of the Isle of Wight. She looked at the postcard-perfect view of the marina, dotted with gleaming boats and faint fog shrouding the coastline. But her trip wasn't for leisure. She'd been drawn to the island by an unusual curiosity. A letter had arrived at her doorstep, unsigned, containing only a photograph of a clock, the most elaborate, peculiar timepiece she'd ever seen. Accompanying the photo was a single line: "Seek the sinister clock and the mysteries it keeps." A local led her to a quiet, time-worn shop on a cobbled street near the harbour. The shop had no sign, just a dimly lit display window showcasing dozens of clocks, some modern, some vintage, and others that seemed like relics from centuries past. The dimming autumn light cast shadows across the glass, making the faces of the clocks appear as if they were watching her. As she opened the door, a bell tinkled, and an elderly man emerged from the back, his eyes sharp and intelligent. He had the unmistakable aura of someone who knew secrets. "Are you the clockmaker?" Holly asked, clutching the mysterious photo. The man nodded. "Call me old Peter. I see you found me, Miss Arnold." "Not many do." Holly's eyes scanned the shop. Each ticked at its own pace, some fast, others slow, each creating a peculiar melody, as though marking moments from different lifetimes. Old Peter's face darkened. "You're here for the sinister clock, aren't you?" Holly hesitated. "I don't know much about it, but I felt I needed to see it." With a knowing look, old Peter led her to a dusty curtain at the back of the shop, and they descended a creaking staircase into the cellar. The smell of ancient wood and mechanical grease lingered in the air, and the walls were lined with more clocks, though these appeared neglected, their faces cracked, hands frozen in strange, eerie positions. Finally, they reached the far end of the cellar, where an enormous clock stood on a pedestal. It was grand and foreboding, its face encased in tarnished brass, adorned with symbols Holly didn't recognize. The hands were crafted like bony fingers, long and thin, moving slowly across the face with a faint growing sound. Instead of numbers, the clock bore cryptic symbols that seemed to shift whenever she looked at them too closely. "This is the sinister clock," old Peter whispered. "It doesn't just tell time, it bends it." Holly swallowed. "What do you mean it bends time?" The old man smiled, though it was not a kind smile. He took a step back, motioning for her to approach. As if compelled by something beyond herself, Holly moved forward, stretching a trembling hand toward the clock. The moment her fingers brushed its cold brass, the world around her shifted. She felt as if she were being pulled apart and reassembled in an instant, and when she opened her eyes, she was standing alone. The cellar was the same, yet somehow different. The air was colder, and the light dimmer, casting unnatural shadows on the walls. The clocks in the room had all stopped ticking, their faces blank. "Old Peter," she called out. A chill crawled down her spine as she turned to leave, but the staircase was gone. Panic blossomed within her, her breaths coming quicker as she realized she was trapped. Only the sinister clock continued to tick, each second unnaturally loud in the silent room. Its hands moved backward, twisting time in reverse, and as they did, the cellar around her shifted, becoming older and darker. Suddenly, she was no longer alone. Figures appeared in the shadows, their bodies draped in tattered clothes from different eras, their faces gaunt, their eyes hollow. They stared at her, silent, unblinking. She recognized some of them from old photographs she'd seen around the Isle of Wight, long-dead villagers, all marked by tragedy. One of the figures, a young woman in a soot-stained dress, stepped forward. Her eyes were wide, terrified. "The clock trapped us," she whispered. "It took our time and keeps us here, forever." Holly backed away. "I don't understand." The woman shook her head, her face twisted with grief. "The clock is a curse. It steals time from those who dare to touch it, trapping them in a loop they can never escape. Every tick, every talk, binds us closer to its heart." Holly felt the weight of every tick pressing down on her, pulling at her thoughts. Her vision blurred, and she could feel her own life force slipping away, as if it were being siphoned by an unseen force. The clock's hands continued their relentless march backward, each tick drawing her deeper into its web. Desperation clawed at her mind as she struggled to break free from the clock's grip. How do I stop it? She demanded. Just then, old Peter's voice drifted through the darkness, an eerie echo that seemed to come from the clock itself. There is no stopping it, Holly. The sinister clock was created to cheat death, to stretch moments into eternity, but in doing so, it cursed all who come near. Your time, like theirs, is now bound to its ticking. With a last surge of strength, Holly lunged at the clock. The brass was cold, unyielding, and her blows only made the clock tick louder, drowning her screams in a chorus of endless, merciless seconds. As the hands reached midnight, Holly's vision faded, and she felt herself dissolving, becoming one with the clock's relentless rhythm. She was now part of its endless, twisted loop, a ghostly presence caught forever in the space between moments. Years passed, though Holly would never know how many. Sometimes she would sense new visitors to the shop above, hear their voices drifting down to the cellar, only to see them vanish into the clock's grip, their faces joining hers in the shadows. She tried to scream warnings, but her voice had long since merged with the ticking, trapped in the cold, hollow pulse of the sinister clock. And so it went on, for all time. The sinister clock's rhythm never ceased. Holly's awareness drifted in and out, her existence now a tapestry of fractured memories, each one echoing with a tick, a tock. She could still feel the pull of the clock, binding her to the cellar's shadows, her essence now entwined with the others trapped before her. And yet, over time, she learned to observe, slipping into brief moments of clarity when visitors descended into the cellar, lured by the clock's dark allure. One evening, a young couple entered the shop, led by old Peter's figure, his once sinister eyes now dulled with age. Holly watched them, her consciousness shifting closer, feeling both an urge to warn them and a twisted sense of welcome. She had become part of the sinister clock, and each new arrival fed its hunger. The couple was enchanted by the clock's strange beauty, their voices echoing in curiosity and awe. Holly felt herself reaching out, her words barely a whisper in the stale cellar air. "Leave it while you can." The woman's head turned. She whispered to her partner, "Did you hear that?" But old Peter quickly brushed it off with a practiced, weary smile. "Old clocks make strange sounds, nothing to worry about, my dear." Despite her efforts, she watched helplessly as they approached the clock, their hands outstretched, their reflections flickering on its tarnished face. The couple's hands touched the brass, and Holly felt the clock's energy surge, a dark pull that stretched through her own spectral form. The hands of the clock began their backward creep, and as they did, the couple froze, eyes widening as they sensed the same consuming dread Holly had felt years before. They turned to flee, but the staircase was already gone, the cellar sealed as if it had never opened. Holly felt her essence intertwining with theirs, their terror feeding the clock's insatiable hunger. She could see memories spilling from them, each precious moment unraveling like threads pulled from a tapestry, weaving themselves into the sinister clock's gears. Their laughter, their dreams, even the first glimpse they had shared, all stolen, fed to the ticking void. In an unexpected surge of strength, Holly pushed through the layers of time, her spirit rallying against the force that held her captive. For the first time, she felt the faintest resistance in the clock's grip, as if her essence had gained a sliver of control over its machinations. She began to pulse within its workings, pushing back against the rhythm that bound her. And then, as if sensing her defiance, the clock groaned, its ticking turning sharp and uneven. The symbols on its face began to flicker, growing dark as cracks spread along its surface. Holly concentrated harder, feeling the boundaries between herself and the clock thinning, her consciousness slipping into the ancient gears. With one last desperate push, she broke through. A horrid, metallic wail filled the cellar, followed by an eerie silence. The young couple blinked, dazed and disoriented, standing before a clock now fractured, its hands frozen at midnight. They staggered back, sensing the clock had released them. Without looking back, they stumbled up the staircase, the cellar door clicking shut behind them. But Holly remained, still within the clock, though something had changed. She felt no longer just a ghost trapped in the clock's clutches, but a presence woven into its very fabric. She was its guardian now, forever bound to its ticking pulse, a silent sentinel over the secrets it held. In the years that followed, old Peter faded from memory, the shop left abandoned, and the clock waited in the dark, its brass face tarnished, its symbols twisted and worn. Yet every so often it would draw someone in, someone curious or heedless of its warnings. and Holly would watch from within, a silent guardian who knew the true cost of time. For now, she was no longer simply trapped, she was a part of the Sinister Clock itself, forever bound to protect, warn, or perhaps claim those who dared to tamper with time. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please don't forget to like, and even better, like and subscribe. Thank you very much, and I hope you have had a great day.